Our documentary is about Panama.
The leader of Panama was Hugo Spadafora, one of the most flamboyant figures in Panamanian history. Spadafora was tall, fair-skinned, highly articulate, and probably handsome, and immensely self-confident. However, he was disliked, and many people wanted him to stop ruling. He was decapitated and had his corpse stuffed into a canvas bag. His head was never found. Both Panama and the U.S. were happy when Hugo was killed because he didn't share similar interests and beliefs for the country. The killing of Hugo was planned by General Manuel Antonio, and his death set off a chain of events that led to the U.S. to invade Panama and overthrow its leader.
General Manuel Antonio, also known as Noriega, was a short and stubby man who was quite shy and had an ugly face that gave him the name Pineapple Face. Noriega was also the commander of the Panama Defense Forces. He was put in as ruler when Hugo was killed. He worked closely with the U.S. to stop drug cartels, especially those that Noriega felt were big competition to him, since Noriega was a drug dealer also. The U.S. let Noriega rule in return for letting the U.S. continue to control the canal.
The canal was a big debate between Panama and the U.S. Even though the canal was located in Panama, the U.S. did not want to give up the power of the canal. Many protesters in Panama went to the canal and brought signs and the nation's flag, hoping it would help Panama regain control of the canal. 22 Panamanians and 4 U.S. soldiers were killed during the attack. This was the start of Panamanian nationalism with its goal to take back control of the canal.
Omar Torrijos was a Panamanian strongman and an idealist. He nurtured both Spadafora and Noriega's career. In 1970, Noriega is promoted by General Omar Torrijos to one of the most sensitive government posts, Chief of the G2, the Office of Military Intelligence. Spadafora warned Torrijos to be careful with Noriega because he is a drug dealer and will kill him. 6 months later, Torrijos died in a helicopter accident. That is when the rivalry between Spadafora and Noriega intensified. This was before Hugo was killed.
Spadafora woke up on September 13, 1985. He did his morning routine, which consisted of yoga and breakfast, then set off for the Panamanian border in a taxi. A friend of his offered to give him a ride to the Panama City, but Hugo feared that he would be put in a staged car and killed, so he took the bus. An officer from the Panama Defense Forces found Hugo and told him to go with him. As he was leaving, he showed the bus driver his ID and told him his name so that he would remember him, and said he was being detained by this member of the Defense Forces. Hugo and 2 officers walked 3 blocks to the local military post and disappeared behind the gate. The next day, a Costa Rican farmer was rounding up chicken when he saw 2 legs sticking up from a muddy pond. When police came, they found Hugo's body without a head.
The U.S. started to worry more about Noriega than they did about the canal, even though Noriega helped the U.S. by giving valuable information that led to arresting of hundreds of traffickers from rival cartels and to the seizure of tons of cocaine. He also played dirty. Noriega shipped vast amounts of cocaine into the United States, which is not what the U.S. wanted. This foul play and other incidents like it caused the United States to introduce an amendment to the 1986 Intelligence Authorization Act. This required the CIA to investigate Noriega's involvement in drug trafficking, arms smuggling, money laundering, and the Spadafora murder. Even when this amendment was passed, it didn't stop Noriega from playing dirty. He knew that staying in power and staying alive would be the same thing.
Noriega knew too much, which made him dangerous. In power, he was very useful to the Medellin cartel, but out of power, he was a threat and they would have murdered him. He was able to manipulate U.S. presidents, so it was very easy for him to take advantage of them. But he could not take advantage of Bush. At first, Noriega saw Bush as a friend in the White House because he knew about Noriega's previous activities. However, as a message to Noriega, Bush sent 1,800 troops to the U.S. bases in Panama. Bush wanted Noriega out.
Another person that wanted him to step down was a man from the Defense Forces, Diaz Herrera. He offered him a diplomatic post in Japan and he refused. Noriega said he would be the commander of the Defense Forces for another 5 years, but Diaz did not want that. Diaz and Noriega started the Big War in 1987. Diaz started to spill Noriega's secrets. He was not the only one who tried to get rid of Noriega. Many other commanders and Defense Forces officers tried to plot attacks on Noriega, hoping it would get rid of him.
A member of the Defense Forces named Giraldi decided that it was best to hand the situation over to the Americans instead of killing him. Noriega commanded his people to give Giraldi a slow death. The failure to get rid of Noriega caused tension to grow. The Americans made a plan to meet Noriega at Dairy Queen, where he would be taken by a man named Villanueva, who was a fiery opposition fellow who prayed for the soul of Hugo at every Mass. He went to the designated spot in the parking lot in a 4-door Toyota Land Cruiser with darkly tinted windows and picked up Noriega. By this point, Noriega had no other options and asked to go to a Catholic Mass before surrendering. After Mass, he went to his room, put on a uniform, and was put on a helicopter on his way to a correctional center in Miami.
Overall, the U.S. was not very successful in accomplishing their goals. Although they were able to get rid of a bad leader, Hugo, their new leader, Noriega, was not successful. They were also unsuccessful in taking control of Panama.